Welcome to Propel 2021. My name is Luis, and we are going to explore the integration with Salesforce and Intacct. This partnership lets you combine the best of Salesforce and Intacct to complete the sales to billings lifecycle, share valuable data, and gain visibility and insight into your customers. The advanced CRM integration offers integrated workflow and record synchronizations between Intacct and Salesforce for standard quote to cash that you can include accounts, price books, products, opportunities are converted to sales orders in Intacct when the sales invoice when the sales order is converted to an invoice, the invoice can be seen in Salesforce as well as the payment. So the synchronization is as a dual synchronization between the two products, and it can offer even extended capabilities such as the one in a professional services, whereas other than the standard quote to cash template, you also have the projects that can be created from Salesforce directly to Sage Intacct. And from a software point of view, you have these opportunities that are also contracts sent back and forth to Intacct as a contract in Sage Intacct. And every time that these invoices in Sage Intacct are generated, can be seen as well in Salesforce. And also, I want to highlight that across all of this, we can also find in there is the collaborate, where Sage Intacct use the same methodology of the chatter in Salesforce, where they become one solution. So all the communication between sales and accounting can be seen as well within the chatter and the collaborate in Sage Intacct. When we talk about a professional services standpoint, you can see the workflow of Salesforce, right? You have the general contact and lead, where it becomes an account, potentially an opportunity where you create quotes, and then you create a project. Once you close this project within this opportunity, this project is sent to Intacct, where the project is created in Intacct, where you can invoice them based on a time and materials or a fixed fee environment, as well as making the payment, right? And then all this payment information, as well as the invoicing, is sent back to Salesforce for your review. So you can continue to use Salesforce for your opportunities, your leads, your quotes, and all this information about customers, about data, and about projects I send directly to Sage Intacct with no manual intervention. And from a SaaS point of view, uh, everything could start with the CPQ quote, potentially becoming an opportunity. And from the opportunity, you can generate the contract directly in Salesforce, and that contract is synchronized to Sage Intacct, right? So you can synchronize not just the contract, but the account, the contact information, the products, any price books, or any dimensions are synchronized between Sage Intacct and Salesforce, right? So you can have all this workflow automated with one point of integration. And it's important to highlight as well that this integration is managed by Sage, so it's not a third party that you have to rely on this integration, right? So all the updates that Sage Intacct offers to you also includes updates on the integration with Salesforce. And after this contract being generated in Sage Intacct, you can send this contract back to Salesforce as a view to see the invoices, to see the payments, and in Sage Intacct, you will have all this automation between the billing schedules, but at the same time, the revenue schedules. Sage Intacct and Salesforce does not only offers this integration for for-profit companies. Sage Intacct also have a non-profit integration that is relevant for fundraising, like development, for membership, and even other types of nonprofit institutions, as you can see here, that automate this workflow between Salesforce and Sage Intacct. The workflow between nonprofits within Salesforce and Sage Intacct is very similar to the one on the nonprofit, but the workflow is a little bit different, right? The common objects are the same as you have the account, the contacts, the product, or even the projects are created between them. But in the configuration, the workflow can start in Salesforce as a campaign or an event, and then you have like a donation that is set up as an opportunity, and this journal entry that is sent back and forth between the solutions until hitting the general ledger of Sage Intacct, or if that's a sponsorship, that can be potentially an invoice in Sage Intacct. Now, what I want to do here, I want to quick show you on how that works in real time. I have two opportunities that I want to start here. The first one in my list of opportunities, I have an order entry demo example where I have an opportunity in Intacct that I just want to move forward and send, close one this, and send to accounting as a sales order so they can go ahead and generate the invoice for the client. So uh, there are a couple of areas that you can see that is different from your standard Salesforce configuration. The first one is on the right, where you have these intact fields already populated, where you can put it in the opportunity. If you are, for example, a professional services company, you can have the project template already here and the dimensions as well. Right, so these are the new fields that compose this integration. And most important, once I close this opportunity, the system will allow me and will provide me with to me a few new options. So as you can see in this drop down button, I have the ability to create a sales invoice, a sales order, or a sales quote, but at the same time, I have the ability to create a project. So if I am using Salesforce as a regular order entry, all I have to do is click on create sales order, and now Sage Intacct will be loaded in your Salesforce screen. So as you can see, the Sage Intacct is being loaded, and now I am in my Sage Intacct screen where I can finish populating this accordingly, right, with my currency, review what I want to review in here, and then I can post this. Now you can see that my sales order has been created, and if I go to my Sage Intacct and I open my sales orders, you can see the one that I just created here as the reference number is the name of the opportunity. So the name of the opportunity is OE Demo 10. You can see here showing to me my OE Demo 10 to my accounting, right? So what I can do here, I can simply continue with my workflow of creating a sales invoice, for example, and so on. All of this configuration and all of this setup is done directly from Sage Intacct and from Salesforce, right? So if we go to our company and subscriptions, you see the advanced CRM option here that you can enable it. So that's what I'm saying, that you don't need third parties, you don't need vendors to help you building this integration, because this integration is built in the product. And in the configuration, you can see how straightforward it is to set up this environment, because you are simply selecting how do you want the synchronization to happen, right? I can enable the Sage Intacct Salesforce synchronization. I can sync my accounts and contacts, billing information, and I can even choose from the other point of view who I want to be the direction, right? Do I want the products to be created in Salesforce and move to Intacct, or from Intacct to Salesforce? And for each section, for example, in the product, I have a field mapping that it's bringing to me all the standard fields from Sage Intacct and from Salesforce, but also the custom mapping, where if I do have custom fields in Intacct or if I have custom fields in Salesforce, I can map those in here and look up the object. Right, so you find this field mapping option not just under the product, but under the other areas as well. Right, I can synchronize price lists and I can synchronize invoices and payments details and so on. So everything is configured under the configuration of Sage Intacct and also from the configuration of Salesforce. Now, coming back here to my opportunities, you can see that I can take a different approach. So for example, if I am a software company and I have CPQ in Salesforce and I have contracts enabled in Sage Intacct, I can use this as a very similar scenario that I use on the order entry, but instead I can create contracts, right? So I can close this one, right? And I can come here and I can create a contract. So now it will create a Sage contract in Salesforce where I can check this contract created, right? I can reveal this and I can, for example, populate some of the information that I have to, right, to finish this. So you can see I can move this contract to activated. I can reveal all of the information. And if I want to add, for example, the locations, I can add my location in here too, right? That belongs to my entity in Sage Intacct. Having that created, I can simply come here and say sync to Intacct, where this is going to be synced. And then as you can see in my contracts, I can find my contract example here generated for me based on this integration, right? So everything runs smoothly between one and another. And always, every time that I go back to this opportunity or to this information, I always going to find, even if it's an invoice, an order, everything that is done in Sage Intacct, I can simply come here and check it, right? So I want to see if someone paid this invoice. I can check here. I can see the status of this invoice. If I sent to the customer, if I didn't send to the customer, or even if I need to print this, I can print the sales invoice out of Salesforce, right? And then going back to the opportunity, I can even create the project from the screen of Salesforce. So this integration is very advanced and very intuitive to the customers that are using it, but at the same time, it's very relevant to you to have this information going back and forth, right? Because in this example, if I want to create a project in the system, I can simply do so clicking in here and then submitting that accordingly. Now, from a Sage Intacct point of view, you will have all this information created and all this information moved to the system to streamline the process between the Salesforce and the Sage Intacct.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Syed Husseini, and I'm the solution consultant here at Sage Intacct. And today we'll be seeing a demonstration of the Salesforce integration with the contracts module that we here at Sage Intacct have developed and created and maintain ourselves. And we did not dole this out to a third party. It's something that we, of course, develop and maintain ourselves. And it's something that really leverages the capability of the contracts module and allows Salesforce to really be integrated with Sage Intacct to take advantage of all of the downstream automation that the contracts module provides without having to have double entry, without having to enter in opportunities and sales information or contract information into Salesforce and then have to do that again in Sage Intacct. the integration that we have built out allows both Salesforce and Sage Intacct to stay in sync at all times, have both sets of data talking to each other, and not have any issues with disparate systems or different sets of data that don't match up or talk to each other or need to be reconciled. And the Salesforce integration really does take advantage of all of the abilities of the contract record or the contract module that we have in terms of being able to really have your subscription record really, or your subscription or your software or the items that you're selling to your customer reflected in your Salesforce opportunity, and having that synced up into the contract record in Intacct, as well as being able to make add-ons, downsells, or any contract modifications or new opportunities that might show up in Salesforce, have those reflected back into Sage Intacct as well. So today we'll be really looking at that transactional flow of how your sales process would work with our Salesforce integration. And we'll be starting the flow in Salesforce, where your salespeople will initiate the sales opportunity to the customer. And we'll look at really how that Salesforce integration takes place within Salesforce and is able to integrate again with Sage Intacct. And again, essentially the process here is Salesforce, the integration really allows us to utilize the entire sales process within Salesforce, whether you have new opportunities being created, having those tied together onto the contract in Salesforce, which is an object that we will enable in your Salesforce with our pre-built integration that we have based off of best practices. And then that contract within Salesforce will sync over into the Sage Intacct contract. So all of the blue boxes you see here are from the Salesforce side of it, which we'll be looking at today, and the green boxes are within the Intacct contracts module. And with this integration, it really is bi-directional. So changes that are made in Salesforce can be reflected back in Sage Intacct, and changes that are made in Sage Intacct can be reflected back in Salesforce as well. There's a number of different integration points, as you can see here. Accounts, contacts, products, price books, the Intacct dimensions flow over as well as projects and other managed lists will all be synced over from Salesforce into Intacct and bi-directionally from Intacct back into Salesforce. So now, having said that, what we can do is jump right into our Salesforce instance here to take a look at that integration. So now I've jumped over into my instance of Salesforce, and essentially the process here is that it allows us really to utilize all of the sales process within Salesforce. So whether we're talking about opportunities, sales quotes, discounts, or even products, and roll them all together to create the contract for the subscription element that you have with the customer. And this includes any of the elements, whether it's maintenance, the software license, the professional services. We want to bring all of that together into Intacct as a living financial arrangement in that contract record. And these arrangements, of course, can change over time. Like if something drops off or adds on, it has to be considered on that financial arrangement over that term. And that also needs to drive the automation around billing, revenue, or even cash against those billings. And Intacct really become the entire financial subledger for that transaction or all of your transactions that ultimately drives reporting, forecasting, or metrics you need right from within the system. However, in order to do that, you want to have the Salesforce side of it where the sale is actually being generated and the quotes are being generated and discounts and the products are being added onto the opportunities be synced up properly. And so we, as part of our integration, as we'll go through, you have a number of different fields here, as you can see on a traditional opportunity record that I have here. And as part of our integration, again, we have different objects or different points of integration here. So for example, I have my account name added in here onto this opportunity record. The account name is something that will be, again, bi-directionally integrated with Sage Intacct's customer record. So your account names in Salesforce will always stay in sync with your customer records within Intacct for the closed won opportunities or the customers that have actually signed and executed a closed won agreement within Salesforce. And then we also have, as you can see here, different products. Now the products are really what's going to drive a lot of that downstream automation because products will be synced up with items within Sage Intacct as well. And the item record within Sage Intacct can be defaulted from the settings perspective to have default billing schedules or billing templates and default revenue recognition templates as well. And as soon as this product moves over into Sage Intacct as an item, it's going to go ahead and automatically create billing schedules for you to really automate your entire billing process, as well as create revenue recognition schedules for you to really automate your revenue recognition process as well. And these products are going to be bidirectionally synced with the item. So if I change an item or create a new one within Sage Intacct, it will automatically be created back in Salesforce as well. And as I move down here on this opportunity record, you can see that there's some Intacct fields that we enable onto your opportunity object within Salesforce to have that integration really working well and really having a no-touch process once it comes over into Intacct. And as you can see here you can specify billing terms, which will also be synced up with Intacct. So whether it's net 30, net 60, or even due upon receipt, you can create those billing terms within Sage Intacct and have them sync back up into Salesforce for the sales representative who may be creating this opportunity to select when doing negotiations with the customer. And then you can also have the Intacct entity selected. So it supports the multi-entity environment where you can have, a contract or an opportunity created for the USA entity within Intacct or different entities that you may have internationally as well. And then you can select some defaults for all of the products that you're adding in. So in this specific opportunity, I've added a SaaS subscription element as well as a professional services element. And both of those elements will default to the start and end date or the service period of this opportunity, which is January 1st through December 31st, 2020. And then you can also have your build to and ship to contact synced up with Intacct as well. And if you change maybe an address back in Sage Intacct, it'll go ahead and change that back in Salesforce as well. So you don't have to duplicate that effort and you get a lot of efficiencies and time savings through that process or this integration itself. Now, as I move up back to this opportunity record, you can see I have this opportunity all set up and it's been marked closed won. So you're going to go through your sales process. If the customer signs, now it's a closed won opportunity. Therefore, it now needs to create the contract record within Sage Intacct. So at this point is really when you're going to go ahead and create the contract. And this is going to go ahead and create a contract, as you can see here, back in Salesforce. And this is a contract object that we create and enable in your Salesforce instance to really be able to tie together now multiple opportunities so that you can have really leverage that living financial arrangement in the contract that Sage Intacct has. So if we go into this contract object here, we can see that not only do we have the original opportunity, which closed on December 15th, 2019 for the January through December 2020 service period, but then you also can have new opportunities or add-ons or downsells or contract modifications also made on additional opportunities that can be tied back to this contract object in Salesforce so it can remain in sync and change the contract back into Sage Intacct as well. So if I go into this add-on subscription, we can see that the customer decided to add on an extension pack starting July 1st going down to December 31st. So it's a midterm add-on and it's co-termed with the original contract, as you can see here. And it's got its own product here with its own pricing and billing templates that are associated here, which are going to provide, again, that downstream automation when we get into Sage Intacct to automatically create the billing schedules for you. Now, in this case, you can even see it has a different close date. So all of this is taking place, and this contract object within Salesforce really allows you to tie together multiple opportunities and have that go into Intacct and really provide you with, ad hoc billing changes or revenue recognition changes, whatever might be needed in a more automated fashion that's more efficient for everybody involved. And then it also allows both systems to really be able to talk together smoothly and without any data sync issues or errors. Now, at this point, once you have that contract all set up, whether it's your original opportunity or you have add-ons set up as well, you then now have to or can activate your contract itself within Salesforce. And this activation feature is really something that we put into our pre-built integration to really provide a control, maybe for the finance department or someone that's delegated to review that, hey, this contract that's been entered into Salesforce, it properly reflects the actual agreement that we have with the customer, and it prevents the syncing or of this contract into Sage Intacct before it can have any accounting impact. This provides a level of control to be able to make sure that everything has been entered in correctly. Now, at this point, you're going to go ahead and activate this contract. And once you activate it, now the system and Salesforce can actually automatically, on a scheduled basis, have your contract synced over into Intacct. And if you'd like, you can also have this on-demand feature here where you can actually sync to Intacct at any time to be able to sync up any changes that you've made. But again, you have both options. You have flexibility there, whether you want to have it automatically synced up into Sage Intacct once it's activated, or whether you want to do it on demand like I'm doing here for demo purposes. You have both options there. So as we've seen so far, that Salesforce integration really leverages the capabilities of the contracts module in terms of having a living financial arrangement. And it allows you to have not only your original opportunities, but any additional contract modification opportunities or add-ons and downsells reflected back onto the original contract to really be in compliance with ASC 606, to really be able to not have to have disparate orders that are going to not really be tied back to each other, even though they might be related to the same original contract. And it does that, and it provides a lot of automation downstream now. Once this contract syncs over into Intacct, it'll automatically create the billing schedules, the whole contract, as well as the revenue recognition. And you won't have to do any double entry or manual input into both systems, which can cause manual error, which can cause a lot of inefficiencies in terms of correcting all of that information. And it also provides a level of control in the activation of the contract to prevent any issues or any data entry issues that were put in by the sales rep, possibly in Salesforce, from coming into Intacct and having any accounting impact. So that's really my presentation for today.
Now, if you have more questions, please contact us. If you are interested in learning and understanding a little bit more about the product, let us know. We are here to help, and connect to your account manager or email us, or you can even visit our e-booth now and chat with us, and we can help you setting up all of this information. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.